I learned I was part of a secret bloodline with powers, and now I'm being hunted. Reddit stories. I remember when my life was normal, when everything made sense, or at least, I thought it did. I had the kind of family everyone envied, or so it seemed. We were close-knit, loving, always there for each other. My parents, Emma and Lucas, had built a home full of laughter and warmth. I was their first child, and they never let me forget how special I was to them. We had that perfect suburban life, Saturday barbecues, Christmases full of gifts and smiles, family vacations by the beach. Our story seemed flawless from the outside, but as with any seemingly perfect tale, the cracks were there, hidden from view. I was 15 when the first hint of something strange appeared, though I didn't recognize it for what it was at the time. It was a warm summer afternoon, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, going through my homework, when I heard my parents talking in hushed tones. They thought I couldn't hear them, but the kitchen, with its old wooden floors, was far from soundproof. Their voices were muffled, but not enough to stop the few words that slipped through. "She's getting too close to finding out," my father said, his voice low and full of concern. My mother, Emma, replied just as quietly, but I could hear the tension in her voice. "We can't keep hiding it forever, Lucas. Sooner or later, she's going to notice something's not right. The older she gets, the more questions she's going to have." I froze in my seat, my heart racing. I had no idea what they were talking about. I had never heard them argue before. At least not like this. My mind raced, and I tried to make sense of the words. What could I be getting too close to? What was my mother worried about? As the days passed, I couldn't shake the conversation from my mind. I tried asking my parents what they had meant, but they brushed it off with smiles and gentle reassurances. "Just grown-up stuff, honey," my father would say, ruffling my hair like nothing had changed. But something had changed. I could feel it in the air, a shift in the dynamics, a subtle unease that had never been there before. It wasn't long after that when I started noticing little things. The way my mother would hesitate before answering simple questions about our family history. The way my father would give me these long, searching looks, as if trying to gauge how much I knew, or if I was about to figure something out. They still seemed like the same loving parents, but there was a distance between us now, a quiet tension I couldn't explain. By the time I turned 16, I had begun to piece together fragments of the conversation. There was something my parents were keeping from me, something big. I didn't know if it was a secret or a lie, but it felt like I was standing on the edge of something dark, waiting to fall into it. And then, one rainy evening, everything changed. I was sitting in the living room, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when the doorbell rang. It was strange, no one ever visited us unannounced. My parents exchanged a look, the kind that instantly made my stomach drop. They knew who it was. I knew they knew. And then my mother stood up, smoothing her hands down the front of her dress, her expression unreadable. "Stay here," she said, her voice more tense than I'd ever heard it. I nodded, but my curiosity was gnawing at me. I waited, hearing the low murmur of voices from the hallway. My father's deep tones, calm but strained, and my mother's quick responses. There was a long pause, and then the sound of footsteps approaching the living room. My heart skipped a beat as I stood up, and that's when I saw him. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that seemed to pierce straight through me. He was wearing a suit. But it wasn't the kind of suit someone would wear to a casual dinner. This was formal, expensive. And there was something about him that made the air around us feel thick, heavy. He stood in the doorway, his gaze shifting from my parents to me, his expression unreadable. My parents stood behind him, looking unusually tense, but my mother's lips were pressed tightly together, her face pale. "Is this her?" the man asked, his voice cold, measured. My mother nodded, but it was a slow, reluctant movement. "Yes. This is our daughter, Lily." I stared at him, my throat tight. I wanted to say something, to ask who he was, but the words wouldn't come. I could feel my pulse in my ears, a loud thrum that drowned out everything else. The man stepped forward, his gaze fixed on me. "Lily, we need to talk." The room seemed to close in around me, and I felt my breath catch in my chest. This wasn't just a random visitor. This wasn't some old family friend. This man knew something. And whatever it was something my parents had kept from me for all these years. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "I'm the one who's going to explain everything," he said, his gaze never leaving mine. Before I could respond, my mother's voice broke in, sharp and desperate. "No, Lucas, not yet. She's not ready." But it was too late. The man, still looking at me, nodded slightly as if acknowledging something unspoken. "It's time, Emma. She's old enough now." And that was when it all started to unravel. It was as if the world I knew, the world of warm family dinners, of holiday traditions, of bedtime stories and happy memories, all crumbled away in that moment. The man stepped closer, his face softening, and for the first time since he had arrived, he smiled. But it wasn't a comforting smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives you when they're about to shatter everything you thought you knew. "I'm your uncle," he said, his voice as calm as if we were talking about the weather. "But there's more to the story, much more." And then everything changed. The man, my uncle, sat across from me, his presence somehow both commanding and unsettling. His sharp features, dark eyes, and the solemn way he carried himself made me feel like I was in the presence of someone who had stepped out of a world I didn't understand, a world I hadn't been prepared to face. I still couldn't move. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, swirling around questions I had no answers to. What did he mean by time? What did he mean by "there's more to the story"? I felt like the ground beneath me had suddenly shifted, and I was falling into a hole, trying to grasp anything to hold onto but finding nothing. I glanced at my parents, hoping to see some kind of reassurance, some sign that they had everything under control. But instead, I saw their faces. Pale, tense, like they were waiting for something terrible to happen. My mother's hands were trembling slightly, and my father's jaw was clenched tight. They didn't look like the parents I had always known. In that moment, I realized that I didn't know who they were anymore. This man, who had walked into our home as if he belonged, had changed everything. "Lily," my mother finally spoke, her voice soft but heavy with emotion. This isn't easy, but it's something we've been keeping from you for a long time." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of her words sinking deep into my bones. "Keeping from me?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "What are you talking about? Who is he? And why haven't you told me about him?" And my uncle leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. There was a calmness to him that unsettled me, like he was watching me unravel, waiting for it to happen. "Lily," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "but the truth is, your entire life has been based on a lie. Your parents, they've hidden something from you, something that is far more important than you realize." I opened my mouth to protest, to deny it, but no words came out. I could feel the blood draining from my face as his words sank in. I looked at my parents again, but they wouldn't meet my eyes. It was as if they couldn't bear to look at me while this man was telling me things that they had kept hidden for years. "Lily, your family, your parents are not who they say they are," my uncle continued. His tone was so matter of fact that it made the words hit harder. "Your entire history, everything you thought you knew about your life, has been manipulated. Your true identity is not what you've been told." I felt a sickening lurch in my stomach. What was he saying? My true identity? The world around me seemed to collapse in on itself, and I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice was lost in the noise of my own confusion. "Who am I?" Then I managed to choke out. "If everything I've been told is a lie, who am I?" My uncle's gaze softened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of sympathy in his eyes. "You're the daughter of someone else," he said gently. "Someone you've never met, and you've been living a lie for your entire life." My heart felt like it was about to explode. What? No, this can't be true. My parents are. Your parents are not your biological parents, he cut in, his voice firm but not unkind. They adopted you when you were just a baby. You were abandoned at birth and they took you in. But there's more. You are the child of someone else, someone very important. And the truth is, there are people who would do anything to find you. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, and my head was spinning. I tried to process what he was saying, but the words wouldn't make sense. Adoption, abandoned at birth, people wanting to find me. It was like a nightmare unfolding before me, and I couldn't wake up. I stood up suddenly, almost knocking over my chair. No, I said, shaking my head violently. This is crazy. You're lying. You have to be lying. My mother stood up too, stepping toward me, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. Lily, please, she said, her voice pleading. I know this is hard to understand, but everything we did it out of love for you. We've protected you and we've kept you safe. We never wanted you to know this. But now it's time. I stumbled back, feeling like the ground beneath me had been pulled away. What didn't you tell me? I demanded, my voice cracking. Oh, why didn't you ever tell me the truth? Because we were trying to protect you, my father said, his voice low. There are people who would hurt you to get to your real family. We thought it was better for you to live without knowing. But now, things have changed. And you need to understand what's at stake. I shook my head, unable to comprehend what they were saying. I had always believed that they were my real parents. They had raised me, loved me, protected me. They were the ones who taught me to walk, to talk, to read. They were the ones who stayed up with me when I had nightmares, who celebrated every achievement with me, who held me when I cried. How could they not be my real parents? How could everything I had known be a lie? I looked at my uncle again, the weight of his words still hanging in the air. And you, I said, my voice trembling with anger and fear. Why are you here? Why now? He stood up slowly, his movements calm and deliberate. I'm here because I'm the only one who can help you understand the truth, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. And because there are people looking for you. People who want to bring you back into the world you came from. A world that's far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. And my mind was reeling, and I didn't know what to say, what to think. My life had been a lie, and I had no idea who to trust anymore. My parents, my real parents, the ones who had raised me, were the same people who had kept me in the dark, hiding the truth from me for years. What do you mean, dangerous? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What do you mean, the world I came from? But before he could answer, my father spoke up. We can't tell you everything right now, he said, his voice urgent. But we'll explain as much as we can. Just know that you're not alone in this. We've kept you safe all these years, but the time has come for you to understand who you really are. And with that, my world, the one I thought I knew, shattered completely. What did they mean by all this? What was my true identity? And who were these people who wanted to find me? I couldn't breathe. The air in the room was thick with the weight of their words, each one hammering down on me, shattering the fragile reality I had built over the years. My parents weren't my biological parents, the family I had loved and trusted. My entire world had been a lie, and now there were people after me, people who would do anything to get to me. My mind spun in a frenzy of confusion, fear, and betrayal. I looked at my father, his face lined with the same exhaustion and pain that mirrored my own. My mother stood beside him, her eyes red from holding back tears. The man, my uncle, who had opened this Pandora's box, stood by the door, his expression unreadable. There was something in his eyes, though, something that made my stomach tighten. I didn't know whether to trust him or fear him. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, shaking with disbelief. How could you do this? How could you lie to me for my entire life? Lily, my father said, his voice strained. He took a step forward, his gaze soft but full of sorrow. "We never wanted to lie to you. We wanted to protect you. We thought in the end you'd be better off living this life, away from the dangers we were trying to keep you from." My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "When you were born, Lily, there were people who were after you. They wanted to use you, to manipulate you. Your real parents." She stopped herself, her lips pressing together as if she was afraid to continue. "You were taken from them before you could even understand what was happening. We didn't have a choice. We had to hide you. We had to keep you safe." "But why me?" I whispered, still struggling to wrap my head around everything. "Why is it so important for people to find me? Who are they?" "You were born into a world of power, Lily." My uncle spoke up, his voice cold and calculating. "Your real parents were part of something that these people would stop at nothing to control. You have a gift, Lily. A gift that could change everything. And there are those who will do whatever it takes to make sure you don't ever discover it." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. "What are you talking about?" "A gift." "What kind of gift? I'm just a normal girl, Bach." "Normal?" My uncle scoffed, his eyes narrowing. "You've always been more than normal, but you've been kept in the dark about it. That's the price you've paid for safety. Now things are different. They know you're out there, they know you're alive, and they're looking for you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run away from it all, escape the madness that was closing in on me. But I couldn't. I was trapped in a world I didn't understand, surrounded by people who seemed more like strangers than family. Who are these people? What do they want with me? I demanded, my voice rising in panic. What is it that I have that's so important? My uncle took a deep breath, as if preparing to tell me something he had been keeping hidden for even longer. "It's not just about you, Lily," he said slowly. "It's about what you represent, your birth, your survival. It's tied to something much bigger. Your parents, your real parents, were part of an ancient organization. An organization that believed in the power of bloodlines, of genetic gifts. They believed that you..." He stopped himself, his face darkening. "They believed that you could change the balance of power in the world." I felt my knees buckle beneath me, and I staggered back into the nearest chair. My whole body was trembling now, my mind racing as I tried to process the overwhelming flood of information. Genetic gifts, an ancient organization? What was he talking about? Your real parents. My uncle continued, his voice steady but tinged with something darker. Were members of an order that believed in the power of certain bloodlines. They were dedicated to ensuring that certain abilities, certain powers, were passed down through generations. Abilities that, in the wrong hands, could be used to control the world. "And I'm one of them," I said, my voice barely audible, but the words had weight to them. They felt like a stone sinking to the bottom of my stomach. My uncle nodded slowly. "You are. And there are those who will stop at nothing to find you, to use your power. They want to control you, manipulate you, make sure that you never realize what you're capable of." I felt the room spin around me. My hands were clammy and my head throbbed with a headache that I could barely comprehend. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want me to do?" My uncle leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm not your enemy, Lily. I'm here to help you. But you need to understand the gravity of the situation. Your parents have kept you safe, hidden away from those who would exploit you. But now, things are changing. The people who've been searching for you are getting closer. They won't stop until they find you, and when they do, they'll stop at nothing to make you a pawn in their game." I looked over at my parents, my heart breaking as I saw the pain in their eyes. They had lied to me, yes, but I could see it in their faces. They had done it to protect me. They had kept me in the dark to shield me from the dangerous truth. "We never wanted this for you, Lily," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We wanted to keep you safe. We wanted you to have a normal life, to grow up like any other child. But the world, it's not as simple as we thought. I could feel the tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I was done with being a child, done with feeling like I didn't have control over my own life. I needed answers. I needed to know what was happening and why everything I had ever believed was crumbling before me. "I don't know who to trust anymore," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "You say you want to help me, but I don't know who you really are. I don't know what's true anymore." My uncle looked at me with an unreadable expression. "I understand your confusion, Lily, but you need to trust me. You need to trust that I'm here to help you understand what's at stake. You have a destiny, whether you want to accept it or not. And the sooner you face it, the sooner you can learn how to protect yourself, Pa." "But how do I protect myself from something I don't even understand?" I asked, my voice raw with frustration. "Oh, you start by learning the truth," he said, his gaze intense. "You start by understanding who you really are, and then you fight for your freedom. Because, Lily, if you don't, someone else will make the choice for you." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of questions, each one pulling me deeper into a world I didn't want to be a part of. But I didn't have a choice, did I? My life, my identity, everything I had known, had been stolen from me. And now, the only thing left was to fight for the truth. To fight for the life I thought I had lost forever. And so, as I sat there, staring into the eyes of the man who had just opened up a world of darkness before me, I made a decision. I would find out the truth. I would face whatever was waiting for me, no matter the cost. The days that followed felt like a blur of confusion and dread, each moment heavy with the weight of everything I had learned. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking through a dream. A nightmare, really, where nothing was what it seemed. The world I had known, the safe, predictable life I had grown up in, had been an illusion. Every step I took felt like I was sinking deeper into a reality that I wasn't prepared for. My uncle, who had suddenly appeared in my life, began to explain more about the organization my parents had kept me from. They called themselves the Custodians, a secret group that had been operating for centuries, devoted to protecting and preserving certain bloodlines with what they considered extraordinary potential. They believed that the genetic traits passed down through these bloodlines could shape the future of humanity, either for better or worse. My real parents had been part of this organization, and their ultimate goal had been to protect me, to hide me away from the dangers that came with my heritage. For the first time in my life, I began to feel like I didn't belong, like I was just a pawn in a game I had no control over. The man who had once been my uncle now seemed like a distant figure, someone who knew too much but didn't share enough. He had answers, but they were always vague and mysterious. He was constantly telling me that I needed to understand the bigger picture, but the more he spoke, the less I understood. One night, after what felt like weeks of evasive conversations and cryptic advice, my parents finally sat me down in the living room. They looked more exhausted than I had ever seen them before, as if the weight of all the secrets they had kept had finally taken its toll. "Lily," my father began, his voice heavy with sorrow, "we never wanted you to get involved in this world. We wanted you to grow up safe, to live a normal life, away from the dangers of the past. But we can't keep protecting you forever. The time has come for you to understand who you really are." My heart sank as I heard those words. For days now, I had been haunted by the truth they had withheld from me, and now, I was finally going to hear the full story. My mother sat next to him, her hand tightly gripping his, as if they were both afraid of what would come next. "We need to take you somewhere," my mother said, her voice trembling. "Somewhere that will help you understand what's happening and why it's so important that you're protected." I frowned, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "There's a place," my father continued, "a safe house where others like you have been hidden." It's been a refuge for those who are in danger from the custodians, and from others who want to use their gifts for their own purposes. We need to go there, Lily, to keep you safe. I didn't know what to say. A safe house. People like me. My entire life had been turned upside down, and now they were telling me I had to go into hiding. It felt like something out of a movie, some bizarre fantasy I couldn't comprehend. But I knew deep down that I had no choice. I don't want to be hidden, I said, my voice barely audible but firm. I don't want to live in the shadows. My father's face softened, and I could see the regret in his eyes. I know, Lily, he said quietly, but there are forces out there that would do anything to take you from us. They would use you for their own gain. You're not safe, not here, not anywhere. My uncle, who had been silent in the background until now, stepped forward. Your parents are right, he said. The custodians are not the only ones who are after you. There are others, more dangerous people, who will stop at nothing to find you. Your power is something they want to control. They'll try to manipulate you, to force you to do their bidding. You don't have a choice in this. You need to understand the truth, and you need to learn how to protect yourself. I felt a surge of anger welling up inside me. Why didn't you tell me all this sooner? I demanded. Why keep me in the dark for so long? Why let me live this lie? My uncle's expression darkened, and I could see the regret in his eyes. We thought we were protecting you, he said softly. We thought that if you didn't know, you'd be safe. But now, we've run out of time. The longer you stay in one place, the more dangerous it becomes for all of us. I wanted to argue, to fight back against the sense of powerlessness that had taken over my life. But deep down, I knew they were right. I wasn't safe. Not anymore. The next morning, we packed what little we could carry and set off in my father's old car. The drive was long and silent, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat in the back, my mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. I didn't know what this safe house was or who the people there were. All I knew was that I was being forced into a life I never asked for, a life that felt like a prison, even if it was meant to keep me safe. As the miles passed, I found myself thinking back on everything I had learned. The custodians, my real parents, my gifts, what did it all mean? How could I live in a world where nothing was as it seemed? By the time we arrived at our destination, the sun had already set. We pulled into a secluded area, far from the main road, and my father parked in front of a small, inconspicuous house. It looked like any other rural home, with a dark, worn-down porch and overgrown grass. But there was something about it, something in the air, that made it feel different. This is it? My mother said quietly. This is where you'll be safe. And we got out of the car, and my uncle led the way up the porch steps. As we entered the house, I was immediately struck by how plain and unremarkable it seemed. The inside was dimly lit, the furniture old but functional. But there was something unsettling about the place, a sense of unease that settled over me as soon as we stepped through the door. A woman, who looked to be in her mid-30s, greeted us. She had dark hair and sharp eyes, and she carried herself with a quiet authority. You must be Lily, she said, her voice soft but firm. I'm Mara. I've been waiting for you. My stomach tightened. Waiting for me? I repeated. Why? Mara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced over at my uncle, who nodded. You're not safe here for long, Lily, Mara said, her eyes meeting mine. But we'll do what we can to protect you. For now, you need to rest. You've been through a lot. I nodded numbly, but the questions in my mind kept swirling. Who were these people? What was I supposed to do now? And most importantly, what was the truth behind the gift I carried? This power that everyone seemed so afraid of. The night passed in a haze, my thoughts racing as I lay awake in the small, unfamiliar room they had given me. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind outside, felt like a reminder that I was no longer in control of my life. The world had become a dangerous place, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. But one thing was clear: my life had been irreversibly changed. and I had no choice but to face whatever came next, no matter how terrifying it seemed. The next morning, as I sat in the small kitchen, Mara came in and sat across from me. "We need to talk," she said, her voice serious. "About your powers." I stared at her, my mind still reeling from the events of the last few days. "My powers," I repeated, a chill running down my spine. "What powers?" Mara's eyes locked onto mine. "The powers you were born with. The ones your real parents tried to protect you from. We need to help you understand them before they understand you." And with that, my life took another unexpected turn. The world of the Custodians, the ancient bloodlines, and the power within me was no longer something I could ignore. It was my reality now, and the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. The following weeks at the safe house felt like a blur, a strange limbo between the life I had left behind and the world I was being forced to step into. Each day, I tried to make sense of what I was learning, but the more I uncovered, the more tangled the web seemed to get. Mara, the woman who had greeted us when we arrived, became my reluctant guide through this new life, teaching me things I didn't want to know. She was quiet but direct, offering no comfort or false hope, only facts. Her voice, calm and steady, spoke of powers and bloodlines, but it was her eyes that told the real story. Eyes that had seen too much, eyes that had witnessed the darkness of the world I was now a part of. One afternoon, she asked me to come with her into the basement of the safe house. The place was dimly lit, with only a few scattered lamps illuminating the otherwise dusty corners. As I descended the creaky stairs behind her, I felt a gnawing unease creep up my spine, like I was walking deeper into a world I couldn't escape from. I glanced around nervously, the musty smell of the basement mingling with the metallic scent of old books and ancient relics. This was no ordinary safe house. This was something more. An archive of the past, a testament to the lengths my family had gone to keep me hidden. At the far end of the room, Mara stopped in front of a large, wooden desk covered with papers and old maps. The walls were lined with shelves that were filled with worn, leather-bound books, some of which were open and marked with yellowing pages. My pulse quickened. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, looking into a dark abyss I couldn't quite understand. "Sit down," Mara instructed, gesturing to an old, wooden chair in front of the desk. I hesitated before sitting, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. My life had changed so drastically in such a short period, and now I was about to learn more than I was ready for, or so I thought. But I couldn't go back. Not now. Mara began sorting through the papers on the desk, pulling out a few documents and spreading them in front of me. Her movements were efficient, almost mechanical, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. Finally, she turned to face me, her eyes sharp and focused. "You need to understand the history of the Custodians," she said, her voice low. "The organization your real parents were a part of, and the role you have to play in it." I swallowed, my throat dry. "I don't understand. Why is this so important? Why are they after me? Why me?" Mara looked at me, her expression hardening. "Because you have something that they want. Something that could change everything. But before we get into that, you need to know the truth about the Custodians." She picked up a thick, yellowed book from the desk and opened it to a bookmarked page. As she began to read aloud, I found myself drawn into the story she was telling, a tale that spanned centuries, woven with secrets, power, and ancient bloodlines. The Custodians were founded centuries ago. Mara began, her voice steady but laced with a hint of something darker. Their purpose was to protect certain bloodlines, those who were born with abilities that could influence the world. These abilities are rare, passed down through generations, and only a select few are born with them. Your parents were among the last to carry these traits, and they were devoted to ensuring that the bloodlines remained pure. They kept the children of these families hidden, away from the world's prying eyes. They did it to protect them from the others who would use their powers for destruction. I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my chest. What powers? What exactly am I supposed to be able to do? Mara's gaze softened slightly, but there was no mistaking the gravity of her words. The powers you have are related to manipulation, control over elements of the world around you. But it's more than that. It's about influence. You can change things on a fundamental level, alter the course of events, and even affect the minds of others. It's a gift, yes, but it's also a curse. If used wrongly, it can tear the world apart. I shook my head, trying to process what she was saying. I can't do any of that. I don't have powers. Mara raised an eyebrow. You haven't tried, have you? I was silent, my mouth dry. No, I hadn't tried. I hadn't felt anything different about myself, nothing that would suggest I could control the world in any way. But as I looked at her, something in my gut told me she wasn't lying. She was telling the truth, and that truth was terrifying. Your parents kept you hidden from this world, Lily, Mara continued. They didn't want you to realize what you were capable of, because they knew that once you did, there would be no going back. The Custodians, they would have used you for their cause, and others would have sought to control you to take you for their own. The people who are after you now, they want to exploit your abilities. And if they succeed well, the world will change in ways we can't even imagine. I recoiled at the thought, my heart racing. But why me? Why am I the one with this power? Mara paused, as if choosing her words carefully. You were born into this bloodline. But there's something more. Your parents, they knew you had a role to play. They chose to protect you, but they also made sure you were trained. Hidden, yes, but not without preparation. They knew that someday you would have to face this. They just didn't think it would happen so soon. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you want me to do? Mara's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something close to vulnerability in them. I'm telling you this because you need to understand the choices ahead of you. You can't hide forever, Lily. You have to decide whether you're going to fight for control over your destiny, or whether you're going to let these people take that control from you. Her words hung in the air like a weight I couldn't shake. I felt the pressure building in my chest, the gravity of her statement weighing me down. I wasn't just some bystander in a story I couldn't understand. I was the key to everything. And now, the world that had kept me in the dark was forcing me to step into the light, to make choices I wasn't ready to make. Before I could respond, Mara stood up abruptly, turning away to gather more papers from the desk. You're not just any child, Lily. You're the culmination of generations of power, and the world will stop at nothing to claim that power for themselves. I sat there, my hands trembling as I processed her words. My entire life had been a lie, and now I was being thrust into a conflict that spanned centuries. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this power, this responsibility. But it didn't matter what I wanted anymore. I was part of a legacy I couldn't escape from. Where do we go from here? I asked, my voice shaky but determined. What am I supposed to do now? Mara turned to look at me, her expression hardening. Now, you train. You learn how to control what you have before it controls you. I nodded, a cold sense of resolution settling over me. I had no choice but to face this. No choice but to learn the truth about who I was and what I was capable of. The Custodians, the people who were hunting me, the bloodline that I had been born into. Everything was now a part of my reality, and if I didn't act, I would be swept away in a tide that I couldn't fight. In the days that followed, I began my training under Mara's watchful eye. She didn't sugarcoat anything. The exercises were grueling, the mental and physical strain pushing me to my limits. But with each passing day, I began to feel something shift within me, a flicker of power, a spark of something I had never known was there. My abilities, though weak and uncontrolled at first, began to show themselves in small ways. I could manipulate small objects, influence the temperature of the room, even cause a faint breeze to stir when I concentrated hard enough. But these were nothing compared to what Mara said I could do. As I stood at the window of the safe house one evening, watching the sun set over the distant hills, I realized something. I had no idea what I was becoming, but I couldn't stop now. The truth was out, and there was no going back. The world was changing, and so was I. The only question left was whether I could learn to control my destiny, or whether it would control me. It had been a month since Mara began my training, and every day felt like a struggle between the life I had lost and the life I was being forced to embrace. I had come to understand more about my abilities, and the more I learned, the more I wished I didn't have them. But they were mine, part of who I was, whether I liked it or not. The power inside me was unlike anything I could have ever imagined. An immense, uncharted force that could control and reshape the world around me. I could feel it pulsing beneath my skin, waiting to be unleashed. And yet, I was terrified of it. Terrified of what would happen if I ever lost control. The safe house had become my prison, a place where I couldn't escape the inevitable reality that my past, my identity, was gone. I had no choice but to face the future that awaited me, a future filled with unknown dangers and unspoken enemies. Every day, Mara pushed me harder, demanding that I learn to harness the power within me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being molded into something. Someone who wasn't really me. I wasn't ready to become the person they wanted me to be. I wasn't ready to become the weapon they were preparing me to be. But there was no escaping it. Not anymore. It was one quiet evening when the walls of the safe house suddenly seemed to close in on me, and the weight of it all became too much to bear. Mara had been gone for the day, and my parents, though they had come to visit, had left for their own safety. I was alone in the small room they had given me, staring at the blank walls, feeling like I was suffocating in a life that didn't belong to me. My head was spinning, filled with too many questions and too few answers. Who was I really? What was my purpose in all of this? Why had everything been taken from me? And then, as if to answer my thoughts, the door to my room creaked open. I jumped, startled, but when I saw who it was, my heart sank. It was my uncle, the man who had introduced me to this chaotic, terrifying world, the man who had told me that my very existence was a danger to the world. His presence, usually so calm and controlled, now seemed heavy with a sense of urgency. "You're not safe here," he said immediately, stepping into the room, his eyes scanning the corners as if he were expecting someone to leap out at us. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. "We've run out of time," he said quickly, closing the door behind him. "They know where you are. The Custodians, the others. They're coming. And if we don't act now, we won't have a chance to stop them." My heart lurched. "What? I thought we were safe here. I thought you said this place was." "It was," he interrupted, his face hardening. "But they've tracked us down. They've been watching you, waiting for the right moment to make their move. And now that moment has arrived." I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me. The world I had tried to shut out, the one that seemed so distant just days ago, was closing in on me. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We leave," he said flatly. "No." Without hesitation, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, a sleek black box with a single button on it. He pressed the button, and immediately, a low hum filled the room. The walls seemed to vibrate for a moment, then stopped. "What was that?" I asked, my anxiety rising. "That was a signal jammer," he explained quickly. "It will block any tracking signals and prevent them from finding us. But we don't have much time. We need to go now." I nodded, my heart pounding as I followed him out of the room. We moved swiftly through the house, my footsteps echoing in the narrow halls. As we reached the front door, my mind raced with questions. Where were we going? What did this all mean? "We're going to the last safe location," he said, as if reading my mind. "It's the only place left where we can regroup and prepare for what comes next." We hurried out into the night, the cool air biting at my skin. I felt a sense of urgency in my uncle's movements, a desperation I hadn't seen before. As we made our way down the narrow path leading from the house, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder. My eyes searched the darkness for any sign of movement. Was I being watched? Were they already here? We reached an old, rusted car parked by the side of the road, its engine running quietly. Without saying a word, my uncle opened the door and motioned for me to get in. I hesitated for a moment, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind, but then I climbed into the passenger seat. The door slammed shut behind me, and we sped off into the night. As the headlights sliced through the darkness, I turned to my uncle. "Why are they after me? What do they want from me?" He looked at me for a long moment, his jaw set. "They want you because of what you are, Lily. Your power. The Custodians believe that you're the key to everything. Control over the world, over people. They think that with you, they can tip the balance in their favor. But they're not the only ones who want you. There are others who will do anything to possess you, to use you for their own gain. And they'll stop at nothing to make sure you don't get away." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about power. This was about control. Control over me, over what I could become. It was about using my abilities to reshape the world in ways I didn't even understand. "I don't want this," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "I don't want any part of it." But my uncle's expression softened, but only slightly. "You don't get to choose, Lily. The world doesn't work that way, but you have one chance to take control of your destiny. One chance to stop the people who want to use you, to stop them from destroying everything. But that means you have to face who you really are. And that's not easy." I stared out the window, watching the night blur past us. "I don't know how," I whispered. "I don't know how to control it. How can I control something that's so powerful? Something that could change everything?" My uncle glanced at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "You will learn, Lily. You'll have to. Because if you don't, there's nothing left. They'll take you. They'll use you. And there'll be no going back." We drove on in silence, the weight of his words settling heavily between us. There was no escaping it. The life I had known was gone. The power inside me was real, and it was growing stronger by the day. The choices ahead of me were terrifying, but I had no choice but to face them. My past was behind me, and my future was uncertain. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone control me. Not now. Not ever. The night stretched on, and the road ahead was dark and uncertain. But I was ready. Ready to face the power within me, ready to fight for my freedom, ready to take control of my destiny no matter the cost. And as the car sped toward the unknown, I finally understood the truth of it all. The real battle was just beginning. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe and like the video.